How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Stephen King's The Langoliers from 1995. Stephen King's, this is based on a novella of his that was originally collected in the Four Past Midnight collection with 3 other novellas there, and this is one of those Stephen King TV miniseries. Back in the day, there was a whole bunch of them that were 2-part specials, basically. One night you would get the first part, the next night you'd get part 2, and you'd see the finale. And each part is an hour and a half long, so this whole thing comes in at about 3 hours. So it's a pretty long one, and for whatever reason, I have the Artisan DVD here. A lot of physical media releases of these Stephen King miniseries. I've seen it with Salem's Lot, I've seen it with It. They just put them all as one big thing. I don't know why they don't preserve the 2-episode structure. You can see at about an hour and a half in, the big fade to black after a major revelation, and then it cuts back. I kind of wish that they would preserve the 2-episode structure, but they never seem to. Anyway, I could ramble about that, but I probably shouldn't ramble much longer. This is the teleplay was written by Tom Holland, and this was also directed by Tom Holland, so cool to see the director also do the writing there. Keeps one big vision. Now, Tom Holland, you horror geeks probably know for Child's Play and Fright Night. He made some really classic horror movies there, so great to see him doing a Stephen King adaptation. He did another one, I believe. He did Thinner. So he has a few Stephen King adaptations under his belt. This movie stars Patricia Wettig and Dean Stockwell there as some of the people trapped aboard this plane. I'm going to go ahead and dive right into the plot. I'm not going to do any major spoilers, but I do want to make sure that I get to say my piece on some plot points, and I want you guys to have a basic understanding as to what this mini-series is about. So let's talk a little bit about the setup here. You get this captain of an airplane. He just got off a big long flight, and someone runs up to him and gives him some news. His ex-wife has actually just died in a house fire, so he needs to go back to their former home and sort out the affairs there. So they put him on a red-eye, one of those late-night flights, all the way back to his hometown. So he gets on the plane and quite immediately, since it's super late at night, falls asleep. After a little bit later, the passengers are awoken to a young girl screaming. You see, when they wake up, they find that most of the people on the plane have mysteriously disappeared. There's only about 10 of them left, I believe, and they look around and they find, watches and, earphones and little bits of clothes and jewelry lying on the seats from where all the people are, but everybody's mysteriously disappeared. Now, being a pilot, he's kind of a de facto leader, and they go and they look into the cockpit and find that even the pilots have disappeared, and the plane is, luckily for them, running on autopilot. They still need the captain, though, because they can't use the autopilot to land, so they look around and they start to head to Bangor, Maine, because they don't want to go to a big airport, because if something crazy has happened, they don't want to be anywhere too terribly crowded. Now, you have 10 people in this miniseries. Naturally, some of them are going to fade to the background, but there are a few people of note. You have a writer. Of course, it's a Stephen King story. You have to have a writer, but he's a mystery writer that's going to deduce things and try to figure out where exactly everyone went and what happened. You also get a little girl who's blind. She was going to Boston to have an operation to see again, and she picks up on things better than she's supposed to. Another one of the Stephen King characters that has a little bit of The Shining in there. If you read through King and if you look at a lot of his movies, there are more people that shine than just Danny Torrance there. So it's always cool to see the connections. And when they get into the powers a little bit more, there are a few things that I saw Dr. Sleep kind of recently, and a few things that they did in this movie that they would do a little bit later. So kind of interesting there. But the two big characters from this group that everyone talks about, and they're the best ones, you have Nick Hopewell and Craig Toomey. Nick Hopewell is a British guy, and he won't exactly say what he does for a living, but he says he's someone who solves the Queen's problems, and he's a really good guy that knows, what to do and can help lead the group and get them out of some crazy situations. And he's really resourceful and basically a British secret agent. You gotta love how Stephen King, will just paint with large brushstrokes. So many writers nowadays, they like to keep everything so subtle, but Stephen King's like, you know what? I'm gonna put James Bond in my story because why not? And he is a really cool character. And the other character that you really have to mention is Craig Toomey. Craig Toomey is this, it's the 90s, but basically that 80s style businessman, and he's been pushed too far. He's going to crack, and what he knows that not everybody else knows yet is he's secretly wasted like millions of his company's dollars just to destroy the company and watch it burn, because he's sort of worked himself too hard to the point of snapping. And you can see that this guy is constantly on edge and constantly angry, and he's going to be a really cool antagonist jerk character. And I've said this before, but jerks in movies, especially horror, are kind of hard to write. They're really, when you use them right, they can go really well. But I found that Stephen King and Tales from the Crypt are like the only places you can consistently get these jerk characters written right. And he's a fun, over-the-top performance, but you also get to see where he's coming from and why he's like this. Some flashbacks to his father telling him how bad it is if he's not a productive member of society, just how terrible a person he could be. And he says something that we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, he's a great, over-the-top, crazy character. And, this is a made-for-TV, low-budget movie. Tom Holland's wacky and crazy style doesn't always get to shine, in a low-budget, made-for-TV movie. But, all the crazy things that he likes to do in his movies, he got to really push them into this Craig Toomey character. And he's really, really fun as just this insane, evil guy there. But you also see why he's snapping, But anyway, the crew land in Maine, and they find that it's not just the plane, there's nobody anywhere. The whole Bangor airport is empty, and they find that the world is a little weird. Sounds don't echo as well as they should. Food tastes bad. The air smells weird. It's somehow this rotten and decaying empty world. Now they get out and explore for a little while, and the blind girl, she can't see, so her hearing's really up, and she can hear stuff really far away, and she says she hears a munching sound in the forest. There's something coming and getting closer, so they can't stay here for forever, because there's this mysterious unseen force, and that's where Craig Toomey comes in and says, that's the Langoliers. The Langoliers are this thing his father had told him about. These little creatures that eat unproductive people. and they sort of, eat up kids that aren't pulling their weight in society. You're unproductive, the Langoliers will get at you. And clearly this is just a story his father had been telling him, but it sort of ties into what happens, something that wasn't real and then kind of becomes real. But, he describes them as balls of hair with sharp teeth that run really fast, so a really creepy thing. But what exactly is actually out there in the woods, that's the creepy thing. And you get the sense that it's constantly closing in on them. And I won't go any further in the plot than that, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. It is a cool mystery, and when you find out why exactly they are where they are and what this world is, it's a pretty cool revelation, especially if you're, sci-fi geeks, and you're like, ooh, okay, so that's what's going on. I really did like it. And without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the biggest strengths, and that is, of course, a story. I mean, you're doing a Stephen King story here. He knows how to tell a good story. I mean, that's obvious. But the whole thing, this really does feel like a big, long 3-hour episode of The Twilight Zone, where there's something off and you're trying to figure out what's the mystery, what's going on, what is in the forest, what is this world, where are these characters, and how can they get out, I mean, even the first episode of The Twilight Zone is kind of like that, where he's trapped in this empty world. So it is really cool in that way. And also, planes are really cool, and there's so many things, where, there's all these plane mysteries, both in fiction and real life. And the idea that you'd fall asleep on the plane and you'd wake up and everybody would be gone is such a great, intriguing mystery there. And of course, airports are big, surreal places, but to get to see one empty, and it's big and roomy and hollow, and it's a super cool, creepy location where you're like, oh wow, where is everybody? And you really notice the absence of people in this big, creepy airport. So a good mystery and a good setting, and like I talked about earlier, a few really cool characters. Nick Hopewell and Craig Toomey are very, very good characters. And another big pro is this also sticks very faithfully to King's original novella. I mean, there are a few changes, but all in all, this is one of the more faithful King adaptations, so good job, Tom Holland, there. And it is pretty fun, but that being said, there are definitely a few flaws that we should get to. First of all, it's 3.5 hours. It didn't really need to be that long. You could probably do this in a nice, tight 2 hours, and it would be cool. Yet I have a feeling if they remade this, movie remakes nowadays, they'd probably do a 9-part miniseries that lasts 9 hours. Gee, but this could actually be remade pretty well. Sometimes you get like perfect movies and you don't want to touch them, but this one probably could go for a remake. It's overly long. Some of the acting is pretty cheesy, but then again, that is where a lot of the fun is, especially with Craig Toomey. But some lines are a little cheesy. But the big thing, and we have to talk about it, is this is 1995 made-for-TV CGI. You get a lot of things like the plane going through the sky. You're like, oh, that's a CGI plane. It's very obvious when they switch out the CGI with the real plane, and you notice it, but the place where the CGI is the worst is when you finally get to see what the Langoliers look like. Now, the Langoliers are a really cool concept, and overall the design's not bad, and it's this really cool, crazy thing, especially when you find out what they are, what they're doing. It's this really cool, trippy Stephen King character, it's very cool, but that being said, they're made with mid-90s, made-for-TV movie, low-budget CGI. The CGI for the Langoliers doesn't hold up, and to be honest, I don't know if it ever really looked good. So yeah, this is definitely one of those things that if you did a remake, just to clean up the special effects would be nice. And the thing is, I like the idea of the Langoliers, and even the design of them is pretty cool. But yeah, the CGI doesn't really hold up, and you'll quite often see these on list of, bad CGI characters and stuff, and that really is unfortunate. If they had done practical and just green screened them in, that could have looked way better. But, CGI is new and interesting, and they had to try it, and hey, you get through things like this so you can have better CGI later. It's all a learning experience, but it is one of the big things people talk about when they talk about this movie. So, yeah, know that this is a 3-hour long, pretty cheesy Stephen King made-for-TV adaptation. Go into it knowing it's low-budget made-for-TV. Just have your standards set at the right place. But if you're okay with that, there's a lot to like in here. The cheesiness does kind of lend to being charming. But, like I said, 2 very classic Stephen King characters in this, and a really good mystery to figure out, okay, where is everybody? It's, like I said, like a 3-hour long episode of The Twilight Zone, and it's fun to piece this together and try to figure out what's going on. And it's really faithful to the book as well, so there's a lot to like, but I wish this had been, a movie with a bigger budget, and I wish they had done more stuff practically. But for what it is, it's fun, it's cheesy, but yeah, it does have its faults, and there's no point denying it. But overall, I liked it. I liked it. I wasn't absolutely in love with it like, the Stephen King classics, but it's a fun enough ride for what it is. Just go in with proper expectations, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, overall, if a cheesy, made-for-TV movie is something you might be interested in, if you have time to watch a 3-hour long thing, it's fine. Just go in with, proper expectations. But I did enjoy this. So, if it sounds like something you might like, I'd recommend checking it out. And hey, always good to see more from Tom Holland. He's a pretty fun director, and I definitely will get to doing more of his. But to see Tom Holland and Stephen King, 2 names that I really appreciate, I'm glad I checked this out. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom if you want to see more of my stuff. When I cover movies, I do like 95% horror. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, I'll definitely have more stuff that you might like. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day.